Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Stacey Chazin. Stacey is a dynamic leadership development coach and a proud introvert, and she is rewriting the narrative on introversion. Having grappled with societal expectations that favored extroversion, Stacey learned to embrace her introverted qualities, turning them into powerful assets that allowed her to thrive personally and professionally. Now, as a fervent advocate and coach for introverts, Stacey draws on her extensive corporate and nonprofit experience, a master's in organizational development and leadership, and certification as a Myers-Briggs Type Indicator practitioner to empower introverts, guiding them toward self-acceptance, fulfillment, and success in the workplace and beyond. I'm excited to have Stacey on the show today to share how she has learned to leverage the true strengths and gifts of an introvert and how she coaches others to do the same. And with that, Stacey Chazin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, hailing from sunny outside of Philadelphia, New Jersey-ish area, right?
That is right. Yep.
Talking earlier today. Big Eagles fan, love an
Right.
Eagles fan, a lot of passion there. I was actually at the Super Bowl that the Eagles won not that many years ago,
In Minnesota.
in Minnesota. Yeah, terribly cold,
Yes.
unbelievably cold outside, and yeah, it was a fabulous Super Bowl. And I had no dog in the hunt. I was there for business purposes, and so we were at the
Wow.
game, and I was sitting next to two older gentlemen that were clearly lifelong Eagles fans. And you could just feel the tension, right, of that game. They were so into it. And as a diehard Bills fan, I can certainly appreciate the passion around. They were like, you could just feel the tension. They were so stressed out. As it got near the end, and I can't remember obviously the Eagles won, but I can't remember, it got very tense near the end and they were just convinced they were going to lose. Like the Eagles were going to find a way to
Right.
mess it up and lose. And when they won, these guys were just like in tears. They were so overcome. And it's awesome to be around them. So I felt like I got to celebrate with some Eagles fans and their big victory. It was cool.
Yeah, very cool. It's nice to watch a game like that when you don't really have skin in the game.
Yes.
You can just enjoy it and not feel that tension. I watched it from the comfort of my couch. We had friends here, but I had to leave the room a number of times because the stress was just
Yeah.
it was a lot to
It was
take. But
brutal. They play the Patriots? There were so many Patriots Super
yeah,
Bowls. Is that what it
yeah.
was? Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And as a Bills fan, I could feel, I understood the tension of like, oh man, we're going to find a way to lose this game. It's not going to end well. We're going to be crushed. And
Yeah.
you could feel it. And then when it didn't happen, I almost felt like I got to celebrate with them. I'm like, yes, the underdogs, they won. It's, the good guys won.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, the opposite happened 2 years ago when we were heavily favored to win and lost to the Chiefs. And
Oh,
that
right. Yeah.
um
Yeah, I
just
forgot about that. Man, the Chiefs. Yeah, everybody's team who people love to hate now, I think, because it's like the Patriots went through, I guess. As a Bills fan, I despise the Patriots. I have to. It's like you're talking about being a Philly fan, you kind of got to hate the Cowboys and the Giants.
Yep.
Um, and yet they were in so many Super Bowls, I think people just started to dislike them for being there, right? And it was like, I'm so
Yeah.
sick of it, right? But the fact is they were fantastic. So what are you going to do? But yeah, I forgot that they lost the Patriots. Well, cool. Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. What's interesting to me and what really the when I read your bio, when I did some research on you, the focus around introversion is an interesting one, right? So I've had a career in corporate sales. Now I coach others in both professionally and then personally, and I know that I have heavy introversion. Like
Hmm.
if you look at the disc profile, I'm a
Hmm.
strong C, right? So conscientiousness with an S supporting. So
Yeah.
support, right? So it's all like, I don't want the spotlight on me, all those things. And yet as a person that's, as you succeed in corporate America and certainly in sales, there's some amount of, you've got to get yourself out there. So I've been to so many events where the last thing I wanted to do was to talk to a whole bunch of people, right? Like I was the guy, I think, as a classic introvert, small groups of friends, deep relationships, right? Very, very loyal, but not like, I didn't have 400 friends in high school. I had like four, but we were tight. Like we were, I'd die for any of them. And I think that's kind of a classic introversion thing. Um,
Yep.
and knowing my kids are introverts, my wife's probably, again, more introverted than extroverted. And I'm curious. I'm sure you have tons of data on this or knowledge on this. I think there's more introverts in the world than extroverts would be my guess. I don't know if that's right or not. You can tell me later. Um, and uh, and so all these introverts running around, we got to figure out how to survive, right? How to do our thing. And as someone who has a podcast, I'm out there, so there's some amount of like I'm okay with a little of that thing. It's just not a strength. Like at the end of the day, like I have to use energy to get there. And so
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if I've been around a million people, I tend to be more fatigued, right? I'd rather
Yeah.
quiet, be able to be in my head, think, be analytical, read. I love those types of things as an introvert. So, but let's talk about you. Let's talk about childhood growing up. What it was
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
family life, all that stuff.
Sure. So, as you said, I live outside of Philadelphia right now in New Jersey. And admitting that I live in New Jersey took me a really long time to be able to do because I grew up in New York, and there's a lot, there's a
Oh,
there's a lot of
big thing there.
New Jersey bias, anti-New Jersey bias, which I think you see around the country. So it took me a really long time to embrace and tell people I live here. It's actually a beautiful state, and love living here. Settled here after college with my husband. But
Right
I grew up
on.
in New York on Long Island.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My mom and dad and my brother, who's 5 years younger than I am.
New
And
Jersey does get a terrible rap. I think everybody pictures Newark. They think the airport area or something. They think
yes,
industrial, they think chemical, but there's parts of New Jersey and probably big parts that are like green and rolling and pretty and trees and all that stuff, right? And having grown up as a kiddo in Buffalo, same thing. Buffalo gets this rap of like, oh, it's just a terrible, horrible weather,
yeah,
disgusting, gross city. Buffalo's a beautiful city, right? There are certainly ugly parts of it, like any city, but there are beautiful farmland, green, lush, beautiful. So anyway, yeah,
yeah,
I get what you're saying about New Jersey.
absolutely beautiful here. Mountains, rural areas, the Jersey Shore. But yeah, I think people picture the opening credits of The Sopranos when they think
Yes,
Jersey or the Jersey Shore,
100%.
the reality shows. And that's just a very small pocket and exaggerated as well.
I'm
So,
sure.
yeah, so I grew up in New York
Long
on Long Island,
Island.
actually. And I had a childhood and an upbringing and a high school experience that actually sounds similar to yours. I am an introvert, of course. And when I started telling my story of how I got to be a leadership coach for introverts and thinking about when that started, each time I tell the story, it started earlier and earlier to the point where I realize now that it started in preschool. Because
Mm.
what happens is we hear these messages, starting from when we're first socializing with other people, that having more friends, taking part in circle time, doing all the activities, playing with more kids on the playground, whatever it is, doing things more frequently and with more people is better
Yeah.
than the opposite, right? If you want to play just with another kid in the sandbox, or if you're hanging out with your friends as you're getting older and you have a couple of close friends, and certainly in high school where there's all this pressure to be social and have as many friends as possible. And this was, of course, before social media. I was in high school in
Mm.
the 1980s, so that wasn't even, before we had to
Not even
contend
a
with all
thing.
that crazy pressure.
Yeah.
But sure, like, so getting messages from teachers, from social circles, from peers, that being more social, having more friends, going out more, that's preferable. The teacher would tell your parents, tell my parents, she doesn't have as, she should try to make more friends, or we don't know why she doesn't want to do all the activities we're doing on the playground with other kids. Well, I certainly hadn't learned the word introvert then, and I
Mm.
don't think my parents had that awareness, but that's really what it was. And so in high school too, I had a small group of friends. I was fine if I stayed home on a Saturday night. I
Yeah.
was a reader. I like to do crossword puzzles. I think I even learned to knit when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So all these things that brought me joy, that fueled me, that society told you just were not as good as the other stuff.
Right.
And I think that it makes you feel less than, that you have to pretend to be something you're not.
Yeah.
To be,
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is? There is that pressure to be more extroverted, that's seen as better.
I think that, well, first, I think there are some myths about introversion that
Mm.
that fuel that. So I actually think it's very interesting what you said earlier when you said you think there are more introverts in the world than extroverts.
Mm,
A lot of people, and from what I've studied and learned in a number of places, it's about a 50-50 split.
mm,
But a lot of people have the impression that there are more extroverts in the world than introverts because many introverts feel pressure to pretend that they're extroverts, to
yes.
act extroverted, even though it goes against their nature. And a great way I explain that to my coaching clients is we do an exercise where I ask them to pick up a pen in the hand they usually write with, and I say, "Go ahead and sign your name." And then I say to them, "What was that experience like?" And they'll typically say, "That was easy. It was mindless. I didn't have to think about it." Right. And then I say, "Okay, now I want you to put the pen in your other hand
Mm,
and sign your name." Now they can do it. But after they do it, I say, "Well, now what was that like?" And they'll say, "Oh, it was awkward. I struggled. I couldn't do it as well. I wasn't as happy with how it turned out." So we're all capable of acting in ways that
mm,
are on the opposite side of how we're wired. So you can certainly, and you should. There are certain situations where you want to be engaging with other people, but the key is actually, well, let me just step back. One of the myths that goes along with this, with introversion or about introversion, is that introverts don't like people. Like
mm.
they don't like to socialize, they don't like to network, they don't like to work with others. And all of these are, or they're shy, they're aloof. Some of them, a lot of the adjectives used are negative.
Yeah.
You, it
Disengaged, not paying, not
yeah,
dialed in, like zoned out.
that's right. Unfriendly, antisocial. Like I
Mhm.
would I would hear those words about myself when I was younger and before I leaned into all this. And so the adjectives that go along with introversion are that people use to describe introverts, I should say, are fairly negative. Whereas the adjectives people use to describe extroverts are much more positive. She's social, she's friendly, she's
Mm,
great at networking, she's a team player.
mm.
And who doesn't want to be all those things?
Right.
And especially the way people say it.
Yep.
So we feel pressure to do that. And what happens is when you try to do these things in the same ways that extroverts do them, you're not going to be successful. It's not going to feel good to you. So, and I say that, like, for example, when we talk about networking, everyone needs to network in some way, right? Very few jobs don't require you or wouldn't benefit from networking.
For sure.
The key is networking in a way, as an introvert, networking in a way that's more aligned with your strengths and your preferences. And so, as an example, an extrovert going to a big conference, let's say, might have as a goal, I want to collect 50 business cards. I want to meet as many people as possible, start conversations and start to set up sales leads with as many people as I can. And they might be very good at that. Whereas an introvert who tries to do that, in all likelihood, it's going to flop. You're going to feel depleted. You're not going to be on your best,
Mm,
at your best when you're talking to people, and you're not going to make a great impression on other people because you're trying to be something you just are not. Whereas what you can do as an introvert, if you want to network at a conference, and I talk about this with my coaching clients, and I can give you a link to put in the show notes to a guide to how you can do this, a conference survival guide, I call it for introverts. Right, like figure out, research ahead of time who's going to be there. Identify three people. This is the advice I give. Identify three people that you
yeah.
want to meet each day. And once you've done that, check it off your list, check them off your list, and then you're good. Anyone else on top of that is going to be gravy,
Right.
but give yourself manageable goals that are going to let you prepare for these three conversations, right? Learn about these people on their website or on LinkedIn, and then you can come prepared with talking points or a goal, some objective you have for each of the conversations. So there are ways to do all these things that feel overwhelming to introverts and are associated with extroversion, but an introvert can do it all just differently.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love the idea of having that plan. And that's one that I've used as well, where it's like, all right, at this event, my goal isn't to meet everybody. Because if you think about that, it's just overwhelming. And the tendency is just to bail. but it's I'm here to meet three people, or better yet, if I can see the list, I need to meet these three people. And then once I'm done, if I hang out, cool. If I leave, mission has still been accomplished. So yeah, I love that, having a strategy around how you're going to interact with a room. Do you have any early memories of attempting to be extroverted and how that showed up for you?
Um, I will say, can I share a later memory actually?
Yeah.
Because this was my aha moment. So I talked a little bit about my childhood and high school, and the same thing pretty much carried through in college. And then when I got out into the work world, it was the same thing, right? Feeling pressure to network, to be social, to collaborate ad nauseum. And I knew that I was struggling in many ways because I wasn't I didn't know how to have my ideas heard and my voice heard in ways that were gonna shine a light on the best of who I was. And so I did it awkwardly and it just it wasn't working well for me. And I was working for a nonprofit organization for about 10 years, and we had a company retreat where beforehand everyone was given a Myers-Briggs type assessment.
Hmm.
So MBTI, for those who don't know, the world's most commonly used personality test, assessment, I should say. And we all took the assessment and we got our reports at the company retreat. And I read mine. Mine is ISTJ, which means I'm introverted, sensing, thinking, and judging.
Yep.
And so that I, of course, was not a surprise. That was how I get energy from the world or lose energy with the world. And it kind of opened my eyes when I learned about the the profiles of other people I worked with. It made me see, okay, right. So I'm an ISTJ, someone who has the opposite letters to me, which is their ENFP, starting E for extrovert.
Mm.
Um, I realized that's why you drive me crazy,
Yep.
right? Because we're wired completely differently. And the other letters speak to how you take in information, how you make decisions, and how you plan for or work spontaneously when you're working toward a goal. So it started to open my eyes to the fact that people are, I keep saying wired. That's just the best way I
It
know
is.
how to, it's kind of like right-handed or left-handed,
Yep.
very similar thing. And what I started thinking about was the fact that you don't want to just be working with people who have the same profile you do, but the beauty's in that alphabet soup of letters
Yeah.
when you bring people together. And so I started thinking about and really going deep into, okay, what does it mean to be introverted? And how can I lean into the strengths or all these strengths that go along with introversion? And I started thinking about that. I started working with a leadership coach. And then here's my aha moment. I was early in that process. So I wasn't fully there yet, where I wasn't fully embracing the introversion. And I was at a big conference, about 500 people. And one of the conference organizers, who I was friendly with, asked me if I would be willing to be part of a small group that would come up on stage when everyone came back from lunch and start a flash mob. So we'd go up on the stage, we'd start dancing. Um, I'm a terrible dancer. I don't like when people look at me, especially when I'm
Right.
dancing. Just not my thing. But I felt all this pressure to say yes, because I'm a pleaser,
Right.
and many introverts are. And I wanted to show that I was a team player. And, wouldn't that be, as a leader, I'm going to take part in this fun thing. So I did it. And even though my introvert alarm was going off, I did it. And when it was done, I had to spend about an hour hiding out in the ladies' room because I was so depleted.
Yeah.
It was so uncomfortable. I just pictured all 500 people looking right at me. And of course they weren't. There were like 20 of us on the stage. But
Yeah.
it was this moment where I realized, I said, why did I just do that? He would have been fine if I said no. There are plenty of other people they could have asked.
Right.
Um, and I felt this pressure to be someone who said, "Oh, look at me, and I can be in front of all of you." And but instead, I felt so physically and emotionally sick afterward that I had to recover away from everybody, and that no one wins. Not the people who had to see me dance, and certainly not me because I wasn't functional at this I mean, I ended up missing an hour of the conference.
Right.
So that was my big wake up call that I just need to like cut that crap out and just be who I am. And I I started learning a lot more about leadership
Mm.
and how we're wired. I got bit by the leadership bug and I decided to go back to school and get a master's in organizational development and leadership. And when I finished the program, I was reflecting on it with a classmate of mine. What we realized was the common theme of the whole program was leadership from a place of self-awareness. And that
Mm.
pertains both to how you how you compose yourself as a leader, tapping into your own self-awareness of what your strengths and challenges are, but also leading other people from a place of recognizing who they are. So if you're a team
Yep.
leader, if you're a manager, trying to recognize what does each person of your team need to be at their best.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think about this because I've taken Myers-Briggs, but I'm not knowledgeable in it. I've
Yeah,
more spent a lot more time in the disc profile, right, in that assessment tool. But there's obviously it's overlapping, and but so as a high conscientiousness, so I have a high C, like I mentioned, and a high S for
yeah,
supportive. We tend to be analytical and thoughtful and all those things. And
yeah,
so the key there from a leadership standpoint, and I've come to learn this, and I spend time coaching around this as well, is when you have a lot of C's in the room, or when you have any C's in your group, you need to invite them to respond, right? Because a lot of times it's like, oh, we've been talking about this idea. Some people are dominating the conversation, some people are quiet. The quiet people aren't necessarily disengaged or not paying attention. They're
yeah,
thinking, they're analyzing, they're coming up with ideas because that's what C's do. They tend to get into the weeds and into the data, which you need that.
yeah,
And so making an invitation of like, okay, Stacey, what do you think about that? Like, I'd like to, to share your thoughts, because often then the C is going to come out with, well, yeah, I've got a ton of thoughts. Here they are. Also, high conscientiousness would be, I'm not going to interrupt you. So if you're talking, or some people are kind of fighting for the microphone, my tendency is to wait. I'm not going to fight you for the microphone. I'll wait till there's a pause, until there's clearly a line that says, all right, you're done with your talking, and these other people are done with theirs, and now I'll offer my ideas. And so as a leader, you've got to almost look around and say, at least make the invitation. Do you have some thoughts? What are your thoughts? Can you share some things? And often then that C will come forward with a whole bunch of stuff. But if you don't invite them, they won't know. They won't come forward. So I love the idea of what you said of being the leader there. You've got to be able to adapt and understand all the different flavors of the soup that you got, right? Because that's where
yeah,
the strength of it really is. It's not having, not one is not better. We always talk about this, like one style is not better than the others. And a lot of people think there are, like, especially, I love to tease I coach a lot of professional services folks. They tend to be like 70% of them are C, are conscientious, and S, supportive, and about 20% are D, dominant, and the very small percentage, about 8 or less than 10%, are the I, which is more the extroverted, that person.
hmm,
And the D's all think they're the best, right? And a lot of people that are in sales, a lot of C's and S's think I have to be like a D. And the answer is really no. Your strengths are your strengths.
that's right.
And so, lean into your strengths type of thing. One thing I wanted to ask you about
Yeah,
though. So I believe in that doing hard things and kind of getting outside your comfort zone is a good thing. It is a way to grow. It is a way to stretch yourself, see what you're capable of. And so I attempt to do difficult things throughout, whether they're physical or emotional or whatever it might be, as a way to grow. And there's this balance that I grapple with of, okay, putting myself in an uncomfortable place is a way to grow, and yet my strengths are still my strengths. And so when do you sort of the teeter totter, and when do you lean in and push forward, like saying, I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to talk to more people because it's going to make me better, versus, hey, I'm introverted and I don't like talking to lots of people, so I'm going to stick with what makes me comfortable, right? Have you any thoughts on that in terms of when it makes sense to push and maybe do things that are slightly outside your comfort zone, or outside your comfort zone, versus
yeah,
kind of embracing your comfort zone?
yeah. Um, so I would say only when you really, really have to is the
Mm.
the dumbed down answer to that because for the most part, if you say, I'm going to try to meet 30 people or 10 people a day at this conference, it's not going to work out well for you. So unless
Yeah.
someone's telling you, you have to do this, um, I would say stick with your plan. And if
Yeah.
someone's saying you have to do this, that's also a bigger concern, I think, right? In talking to your manager or whoever's telling you that about what you need to be successful. So,
Yeah.
and certainly when you're like, there's collaboration is such a hallmark of how folks work these days, right? And I'm all for collaboration. But let's say you're on a team project and the expectation is you're collectively responsible for some outcome. Excuse me.
Sure. Sure.
To the extent that you can um, advocate for what you need to be successful on that team. And I'll give you an example.
Mm.
One thing I'm a proponent of is when a team comes together for the first time, whether it's an ad hoc team or a new standing team. I love the idea of when the team comes together, having everyone go around the room and share with the rest of the group what's one thing you want this group to know about what you need to be successful.
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity for you as an introvert to say, for example, if this characterizes you, I need a balance of collaborative work time and independent work time,
Yeah.
where I respond best when I have an opportunity to give your question some thought and to put my ideas in writing. And you'll have people go around the table, and hopefully people will be upfront about who they are and what they need. And then you can start to hopefully the team leader or the whole group can design structures and expectations that are going to set everyone up to be successful so
Mm.
that it's not a one size fits all
Yep.
um, expectation. And if I could jump back to something you just said earlier,
Sure.
when you were talking about being in a meeting and as a leader, knowing who you might need to call on so that they have a chance to speak up, I want to build on that because for some people, that's gonna work really well. They're going to appreciate that. Other people who are introverted might feel put on the spot, and
Hmm.
they're going to do better when they have an opportunity to give the question some thought. Right? They might not have an answer yet for you.
Right.
So to the extent that you can, as a team leader or a meeting facilitator, say, if anyone would like to share ideas afterward and they want to meet with me one-on-one, or
Yep.
they want to share ideas in writing, I invite you to do so.
Yeah.
So you're really accounting for how are people going to show up as their best? How can you, someone I manage or a member of my team, how can I support you so that you can tap into your real strengths as an introvert and
Mm.
really extroverts too? You want to do this for anyone, whatever your preference is there.
Right.
But really, really paying attention to, am I making, and I want to use the word accommodations, which I know we typically use when we talk about people who are differently abled in some
Mm.
way. And I know it's not the same thing, but I would say providing opportunities for people to contribute
Yeah.
in the ways that are going to work best for them. So you're
Right.
getting the best out of them and they're feeling as good as they can feel about their contributions.
Yeah. 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 Everyone has different space that they like to work in, right? And
Yeah.
different ways that they like to communicate. And I think to some degree, a good leader, not to some degree, a good leader also will, someone that loves to talk and that is the way they develop ideas is to talk it out and be sort of stream of consciousness and just kind of out loud. That person has a way of suppressing others in the room just by virtue of we can't all talk over each other. And so if you have one dominant person, their ideas are gonna be forward um, because they're just taking over the conversation. And so having, I think, as a leader, be able to dial that person back by either saying, "Man, I appreciate so many of your thoughts. Let's see what others have to think," or just sort
Yep.
of getting them to take a pause is an important trait, I think, as a leader as well. Because otherwise, you can have a group get dominated by a single thought or a person that is now we're just kind of going down the path of this because they were the loudest or the most. That's the way they develop ideas is stream of consciousness out loud as opposed to let's give it a minute, let's think, let's analyze, let's knock some ideas back and forth. We've got to be able to have others contribute, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been a meeting facilitator for a long time. And before I became involved as a leadership coach, and we used to talk about these challenges related to other power dynamics in the room. right? Age, title, race, ethnicity, gender, that you frequently will see. It's I think it's fair to say it's the exception that when you don't see dynamics like that show up in a
Mm,
meeting.
yeah.
So people uh, feeling more entitled to speak up more or speak up first, and other people feeling a little marginalized. And so I used to work as a facilitator to try to manage those dynamics. And while this is not the same thing, it certainly, because it's not rooted in power, um, it's certainly a dynamic that if facilitators or team leaders are not aware of, you are, like, to your point, you're going to have other people's voices and ideas dominate a conversation and have a disproportionate influence on decisions and outcomes from your meeting.
Mm, 100%. 100%. Yeah. The one of the things I wanted to ask too about, so or my perspective, and I'd love yours. Often introverts are some of the things that they have to share can be some of the most creative and innovative things, and yet they're hesitant to share them because, again, going back to the disc style, I don't like to be wrong. I don't like to appear foolish.
Mm,
And so as an introvert, I love my thoughts. I love analyzing and ruminating and continuing to ruminate. And I can get stuck in sort of analysis paralysis because the fear of making that final decision and it being a bad one is like negative to me. Whereas someone who's more dominant might be like, man, I make wrong decisions all day long. I'll make 28 in a row. I don't really care. I don't remember them. I just remember that one number 29 was perfect and that was awesome. And that's all and I want to celebrate.
yeah.
I would be like, oh, I can't believe I made 28 wrong decisions in a row. Um, and so getting the introverted, conscientious person to share can be this beautiful thing because there is can be some real magic and creativity there, and yet it's hard for them, right? So and I would draw the analogy to a lot of some of the best actors are introverts, right? Some of the most creative types, singers, actors. You hear stories about they had massive stage fright, like they're just racked with stage fright. I think Dustin Hoffman was one. It's older, my era, right? He was classically had massive stage fright, could barely speak. I think Al Pacino might have been one or is one. Robin Williams, I think, had huge stage fright, and yet
Mm,
these are some of the craziest, most creative types out there. So getting as a introvert, I think when you feel some of that, and again, I would love your take. If you feel that hesitancy, like I don't want to get out and perform, or I don't want to step forward because my ideas may be wrong or bad,
yeah.
leaning into that and saying that getting them out there is important because they likely have some beautiful ideas to share. And so as an introvert, share, my encouragement is, man, take that step. It goes back to the whole idea of be a little uncomfortable, and you might recognize then through repetition, wow, I'm pretty good at this, right? I do like the feedback that says that was really good. So I don't know any thoughts there, reactions to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting. I've used different words to describe that, but I talk about it in terms of perfectionism.
Mm,
And I think you included the word perfect in there when you were
mm,
talking about, but yeah, it's you don't want to be wrong, but we tend to disproportionately suffer from perfectionism, myself 110% included.
yeah,
And so you don't want to put the idea out there because you're afraid it's not perfect, which means you're never going to put the idea out
right.
there because
It was never
it'll
going to be
never be
perfect.
perfect.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of the perfectionism and not wanting to be in the spotlight, right? So you're up on stage, whether it's a literal stage or a
Yes.
figurative stage, you're putting forth, especially when it's something that's particularly innovative or creative, something different than the status quo, you feel more pressure
Yeah.
to do that. And that's something that I work with my coaching clients on too. Like, how can I call it thoughtful visibility
Mm.
strategies.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
look,
say, how do you encourage your introverted clients to get themselves out there?
yeah. So it's actually one of the things I love teaching, and I'll give you some information also if you want for the show notes. I have an on-demand program I just opened up called the Introverts Leadership Formula. And one of the things I teach in there is how can you be thoughtfully visible? How can you how can you promote yourself, your ideas, your contributions without like that ick factor? Because we get really uncomfortable, more so as introverts, to we worry about being boastful and
Mm,
so how can you do that? And it's similar to what we talked about before. Everything is about tapping into what you're really good at as an introvert and finding channels to use those strengths. So, for example, introverts tend to be very good at writing. We tend to be good writers, which is not surprising because it's time that you can, it's a communication format where you get to work on your own. You often have time to be thoughtful, to do a draft, to reread what you wrote before you share it. So one of the things I guide people to do is um, with your pen, write your leadership story. So what's the story of, it's not your CV, but it's a narrative of how you've grown and evolved as the leader you are, regardless of where you are in your career, right? You could be a recent college grad and you will have had experiences in your life, maybe summer jobs or courses you took in college and clubs you were in where you had an opportunity to be a leader, to step up and show what your gifts are. So by writing your leadership story, what you do is you include in that story examples of how your introversion helped you to succeed, helped you to be a strong contributor, helped you to move toward solving a problem. And you have this leadership story that you share with other people, get their feedback on it, and then you look for opportunities to tell that story. Typically not from start to finish,
mm,
but what you can do is you kind of have it on your in your back pocket, so to speak, where you can pull pieces of it when you're talking to other people or emailing with other people about the role that you might play on a project, or when you're advocating for a promotion or a raise or some other
mm.
a leadership role. Here's who I am as a leader. And without explicitly saying, I used my introverted gifts to do
Yes.
this, you're essentially saying I used my head for deep analysis or my attention to detail. Um, Introverts tend to be highly empathetic and have a high emotional intelligence. So, giving examples of when you were able to manage a situation that was something that was a heated conflict, that you were able to use your natural empathy to help folks move toward a mutually satisfying solution.
Yeah. 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 I was going to say, getting an introvert into that leadership role can be more challenging, right? And so, how do
Yeah.
you encourage introverts to advocate for themselves to become leaders? You shared a little of it there. I mean, certainly there's great qualities of leadership that introverts have, that ability to be
Yeah.
thoughtful, the ability to be inclusive, the ability to analyze and think and consider other things and be empathetic, all great introverted qualities that also are great qualities of leaders. But is there a thing that you work with or a strategy that you encourage uh, your clients around getting them into those positions of leadership? And the other one you mentioned is a massive one um, is advocating for themselves relative to pay raises and or promotions, new opportunities, things like that, where it's like, nope, I'm just going to sit, I'm going to stay back.
Yeah. So yes. And again, all about tapping into your strengths as an introvert. So when you're preparing for, let's say you have in your mind you'd like to get promoted by the end of the year. A number of things you want to do. One is again, we really shine when we can prepare and pull things together. So I encourage you to keep a running list of contributions you've made over the course of the year. What are some ways that, what are objective things that you did? And what impact did doing those things have on your team or your organization or the achievement of some goal? So to keep your journal, however you want to do it, whether it's in a spreadsheet, uh, in writing, whatever works best for you, and in addition to that, to be collecting any emails that you get from people that kind of acknowledge your contributions. I like to, I suggest
Mm,
creating a folder in your inbox, a separate folder where you move all these emails when you get them. So they're in one place. You
yeah,
can call
great
it
idea.
like evidence that I'm great or whatever you want to call it. And
Yeah.
that gives you like a good positive reinforcement and save them over the course of the year. So you're basically pulling together your portfolio. You're building your case before you even make the ask of why you've earned this promotion. Um, the next thing is to meet with your manager or whoever's making that decision as early as you can. So I like to recommend doing this on a quarterly basis if you're aiming to get promoted by the end of a year, to have a check-in with your manager that's exclusively focused on this topic. Uh, Sharing this is where I hope to be at the end of the year. I want to get your feedback, um, how I'm measuring up, and and if I'm not ready, what do I need to do to get ready? So you're getting this objective information about whether it's more experiences or you need to show that you're capable of doing something, whether you need to reach some type of measurable target when it comes to sales or engaging clients, whatever your business is.
Mhm.
And what I recommend doing is after each meeting with your manager, writing up a recap of the conversation. And it could be as detailed or as high level as you think you need to, but just say, thank you for your time. I want to recap what I heard from you, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to embracing these challenges. This is my plan for the next quarter, how I'm going to be working toward that. So it not only it documents what your manager said to you, and it also communicates that you're committed to doing what you need to do to get there.
Yeah, I love that. Um, is your experience that introverts, I'm trying to ask this in an open way, not sort of bias your answer, but
Yeah.
the idea that introverts can really work in any walk, work in any role, corporate wise, reach any level of success. Have you seen any sort of patterns in your client base around, well, my introverts, my clients tend to be all, they're all lawyers because X, because lawyers tend to be analytical and they like to read and they like to write. And so, or is it no, I've got a salesperson, I've got a singer, I've got a librarian, I've got a school teacher,
Yeah.
what have you seen in terms of that?
So I think you can absolutely be successful in any field, whether you're introverted or extroverted. Probably being a front desk receptionist is not something you want to do as an introvert.
Right.
I think the key is whatever the role is, that you have opportunities to recharge, that you're not on 8 hours a day or whatever your workday is. So I do believe that for the most part, you can design your workday. You have some control over the flow and structure of your workday to ensure that you have those recharge opportunities. And I've written a lot about how do you job search when you're an
Mm,
introvert. And one of the things you really want to be doing to speaking to this point is you're not just pitching yourself to a company, but you want to make sure it's the right fit for you in a lot of ways,
mm,
including with your introversion. And so when you're exploring, when you're having conversations, when you're interviewing, asking what's the scheduling like here, right? To get a sense of, am I going to be in 8 hours of back-to-back meetings every day? That's
mm,
probably not going to be the role for you, right?
yeah.
Will I have opportunities to write, to you know, how many teams am I going to be working on, or how many clients am I going to have? Because you might do better when you're able to go deep with just one client and stay focused in one area versus having 15 different clients that you're accountable to. That might not be the best match for you as an introvert. So I guess what I'm saying to answer your question is
Yeah.
my clients, and from what I've seen, you can be successful as an introvert in most jobs,
Yeah.
but you just need to make sure that these structures are in place
For,
that'll
for sure.
accomplish how you do your best work.
Makes sense. Um, What about receiving recognition at work? So I struggled with this in the corporate world of having this mindset of my work will speak for itself. I'm not going to promote myself. I will simply do great work and the work will do my talking for me. And so I leaned into jobs that had very measurable things that, so typically sales jobs are very black and white. What did you sell? How much? Well, there was a goal of this and you either met it or you didn't, or you exceeded it. And so it's very easy just to put it on a piece of paper and say, Eric was number whatever on the stack rankings. And so that did my talking for me. And that was good because it was like, it was very black and white. There
Yeah.
are not many jobs that are like that outside of sales. And so you have to be good at especially in a large corporate environment of, what I was super uncomfortable and still I'm uncomfortable with, which is tooting my own horn, right? I never want to do that. Doesn't like me, does not feel good to do that. And yet I had many mentors say, you have to make sure people understand the work that you're doing if you want to get to this next level or if you want to continue to get promoted because they don't know. They're busy. They don't know and you have to let them know. So how do you encourage introverts? Is there, because I love some of those strategies you just shared with the email inbox and saving people's testimonials. 'Cause that's a great, I'm going to make that note for myself. Um, are there strategies around getting recognition and sort of advocating for yourself?
Yeah, yeah, and they're going to be similar to the other things we talked about in that think about what you excel in, right? You excel. And I actually, if I could just take a breath, one thing I want to
Yeah,
say is I've been saying introverts like this or excel in this or are great at this or don't like that. I'm using generalizations
sure.
here. Every introvert is going to be individually wired a little differently. So when I say these things, like generally speaking,
It's a
this is how
broad
it.
brush. Yeah, yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So generally speaking, we're good writers. Generally speaking, we are much better at forging relationships and having meaningful conversations with one person at a time or a small group of people at a time. S- So keeping those two strengths in mind, um, think about if you're going to promote something you did, you want people to know some way you contributed to the organization or to an outcome, you're probably not going to want to make an announcement at a staff meeting, right? It's going to be in a conversation, an individual conversation or a small group conversation with your manager, with your peers, with people outside your organization, or it's an email.
Yeah.
It's putting something, maybe it's a memo that, and I think going back to what you asked about how do you advocate for a promotion, putting something like creating a memo for your
Mm,
manager on a quarterly basis is another strategy where you recap, here's what I did this past quarter objectively, and here's how it benefited our team, or it advanced us, it advanced us as we're working toward this goal or objective. So, so you're capturing
yep.
it in writing. It also is something, what I love about that is your manager can go back and look at that, pull it out when they're advocating for you with their boss, if
Mm,
they get sign off on your promotion. So it's not that she has to think back, oh, what did Stacey tell me about what she did this quarter? Right? It's right there in writing. And so
that's a great idea.
you've what's the word? You've captured it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's a
so
great idea. I love the idea of it just kind of came to me just in this conversation of having like a packet about yourself, right? These are some things people said about me. I've got those emails going back to
yeah,
that. Here's some, put a memo together, kind of accomplishments, things I've gotten done, and just keeping that running list of things and using your strengths, which is that ability to be analytical and or be a good writer, put thoughts down in paper. It's a great idea. And then you don't have to necessarily be the one that's, raising your hand in a meeting saying, let me tell you all the
yeah.
great things I did this week or month or
No
yeah.
one wants to do that.
No, no, absolutely. Very cool. What other thoughts do you have to share about the introverts out there, Stacey? Any other kind of nuggets or takeaways?
My biggest piece of advice is lean into who you are, right?
Yeah.
Recognize the gifts that you have as an introvert, your innate gifts. When I work with my coaching clients, I use a framework called appreciative coaching. And it's something from the world of organizational development and leadership that essentially guides people to identify their positive core. And what that means is the best of who you are. Who are you when you show up? You're most effective when you're happiest, when you're having the greatest impact on the world, on your work. What are all the things that make up your positive core? So for me, for example, I'd say in my positive core is I'm a strong writer. I
Mm,
love to present. I'm also deeply analytical. So let's say those are three things that make up my positive core. So I guide them to identify what is your positive core, and then what is some dream area of your professional life for you? Like what do you want to, not just I want to be wildly successful, but it could be I want to be an inspirational leader or I want to
mm,
be a powerful communicator. And then I guide them to figure out how can you use your introverted gifts, your positive core to create a plan that gets you to that dream. But it's all based in the positive. It's not, oh, well, I'm not this enough. I'm not social enough, or I'm not funny enough or creative enough.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing you have this whole set of gifts and strengths. And, instead of shunning them and thinking you need to be something you're not, extroverted,
Yeah.
think about how can you use your gifts to work towards your professional dream, that future you want to have for yourself in your career. And um, we're always going to be more successful when we lean into who we are and try to figure out how to use those strengths, those assets for good.
Yeah. I love that. One of my greatest mentors, a guy named Larry Haynes, way back in my consulting days at Ernst and Young, he was one of the most engaging people that you would meet. Everybody loved the guy. Big, big heart, great listener, and definitely an introvert. And he would say that. And yet he was often the guy at the front at the podium. He was leading
Yeah.
teams. He had big roles within the firm. And yet it was because he had this massive heart. He was a great listener, empathetic listener. People
Yeah.
got right away that this guy cared. Clients felt it. This guy cares about me. His peers felt it. The teams he was around felt it. So he really leaned into his strengths, which was all those things I mentioned. At the same time, he was out front a lot. He was in the spotlight a lot. And I know it, I think I know it burned a lot of gas for him. I know it like took
Yeah.
energy. At the same time, he could do it really well. He just wasn't going to do it probably for 45, 50 hours straight. It was like, okay. And I think recognizing that as an introvert, like I can do that. I can get myself out there. It's just going to require me to burn more fuel than someone who is maybe wired a little differently. And yet the things that are really going to um, help me to be my best are the things that I'm wired for naturally, right? Those things
Yeah.
that says, I care about people. I will do the work. I will be, introspective. I will be thoughtful of others. I'll be empathetic, all that stuff. But recognizing I can lean out there, it's just going to take a little extra gas. And so, it's sometimes you put your foot down and go, and then, but I think recognizing and just appreciating, like you said there a minute ago, it's not like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I'm not good at this. Like, no, I am good at these things, and I
Yeah.
can lean into and do those other things when I need to. At the same time, I'm really gonna use the powerful lever I've got in the things that I'm great at.
Yeah. And that's a great example, right? There are plenty of leaders who are introverted.
Mm,
And it's knowing yourself, having that leading from a place of self-awareness, like I said earlier. Um, but it's true for no matter, everyone's a leader in some way. So you don't have to wait till you're at the head of the
mhm.
company or even close to it to be thinking about these things. There are ways that you can structure your day, even structure your workplace that are going to be more conducive to fueling your energy. And I actually, I'm really, that's something that really intrigues me. And I wrote something about it recently. I created this daily productivity hacks for introverts. So different
Mm.
things you can do each day in terms of your workspace, the flow of your day. So if anyone's interested in that,
What are your
my
top three?
website,
Give me
yeah.
your top three there.
Okay, top three are you want to do task batching. And so what that means is to carve out times of your day where you're focusing on specific types of work so that you're not switching back and forth. So for anyone, what that means is you want to think about when your energy tends to peak
Mm,
and schedule tasks that require your most brain power for
yeah.
that time of day to the extent that you can, right? Sometimes you don't have control over when a meeting happens, but for me, morning is that's when I'm at peak brain power. So I schedule my most cerebral work, things I
Yeah.
need to do, podcast interviews I like to do in the mornings too. I'm
Yeah.
most energized. And then in the afternoons, I'll block time to do administrative stuff that to me is kind of mindless.
Yes. Yeah.
That's one thing.
Okay.
Another thing, if you have an in-person job, which not everyone does these days, to try to set up your workspace. If you don't have a door, if you're working in a cubicle, let's say a lot of open office
Yeah.
work plans are the rage nowadays. Unfortunately, I say
Yes.
unfortunately as an introvert, you might be sitting there surrounded by people all day. block 10 minutes of time once every hour or 2 hours, whatever you need to step outside if you can, or to step away so that or when you can put on headphones
Yeah.
and listen to music, or just maybe they're just noise canceling headphones
Right.
and you're not listening to anything. So you want to carve out that time in your day so that you can refuel, so you can recharge that way.
Yeah.
As an introvert, I also love the idea of um, starting off with a morning routine that's going to get you grounded, and
Mm.
that's going to give you some time to reflect and just get centered around what the day ahead holds for you. And whether that's meditating, doing yoga, taking a walk outside if you can, but setting up that routine so you know that you're creating this transition from I woke up and I did my personal stuff, and now I'm making this mindful transition to work, and I'm going to be moving into however hectic my day is going to be from a place of relative peace and being grounded.
Love that. Love it. That's fantastic. Yeah. So batch your time, create space, get that fresh air walk and or find some quiet
Yeah.
space. And then the third, have that morning routine, ground yourself. Love the morning routine thing. I'm a big believer. A lot of episodes we've talked about on the show about the importance of morning routine, the importance of movement, exercise, and, hot, cold, all those things, journaling.
Yeah.
Really good. I get out of the habit of journaling. At the same time, I know it's really good even to just get a few thoughts down on paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Morning.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And morning is the time. I don't know if it's that way for most people. Maybe not. It seems like a lot of my circle are morning people and they do their best work in the morning and starts to taper off. You try to do really hard things at 3, 4 in the afternoon. It gets just,
Yeah.
you can do it. It's just going to take, again, more gas and more energy to push up that hill.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So stacking your day to where you do those high value projects and things in that morning when you got most gas in the tank.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that. What's next for you, Stacey? What's coming up for you? What are you excited about?
So I just launched an on-demand learning program that it's called the Introverts Leadership Formula. And while we're talking right now, the enrollment is open. It's going to close soon, but we'll be open up back again in early January. If
Okay.
folks want to check it out at ifactorleadership.com, that's my website. And I'm very excited to be supporting introverts. I'm teaching strategies for getting visibility for yourself, like we talked about today a little bit, how you can communicate powerfully, how you can prevent introvert burnout, which is a big risk because like I alluded to a little bit ago, most workplaces are designed with extroverts in mind, right? Open space, back-to-back meetings. So what can you do to identify signs and symptoms of burnout and prevent it? And then literally, how do you ask for a promotion and a raise? How do you prepare for and have those conversations with your manager?
Really
So very
good.
excited about that, getting that
Super,
out into the world.
super important. That's awesome. Where can people find you and connect with your work?
They can find me at ifactorleadership.com.
Okay.
If they go to ifactorgift.com, I have a guide I created. It's a meetings playbook. So how can you have, as an introvert, have your voice heard at meetings and your ideas heard either at the meetings or after the meetings? And then I'm also on LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. iFactor Leadership.
I Factor Leadership on LinkedIn. Got it. Awesome. Stacey, this has been a great talk. I so appreciate you taking time out of your day and coming on here and sharing so much with the audience. That's fantastic. I love our conversation. So thank you for that. Absolutely.
It was a pleasure. And I'm glad we could do it in the morning.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely. And so I wish you the best. We'll get these links in the show notes and we'll encourage everyone to reach out to Stacey. It's fantastic. She's got a lot of great info to share.
Thanks, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. To our audience, thank you for taking time from your day to listen. If you would like the show, comment, subscribe, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.